Great. Well, it is March 31st. I'm Christine Moore, and I'm Supervisor Stork's Chief of Staff and heading up the Penn Daw Fire Station Emergency and Supportive Housing Advisory Committee meeting. It has been some time since we have had a meeting, and county staff is going to be presenting the latest designs to include the feedback that we had at our last meeting. I think things will be a little different than what we looked at last time. I would ask that everybody please mute. Supervisor Stork is going to open up with a few opening comments, and then I'm going to hand it off to Vrushali, and then the design team will walk through the presentation, and then we will take questions from committee members first. And once we have gone through that, then if there are any community members that are not on the advisory committee that would like to ask questions, we will take some of those questions at the end. So with that, Supervisor Stork.
Thank you, Christine. And thank you all advisory committee members. We've been doing this a while. We've, I think, put together a good design, and then we ran into some challenges with the state and the funding that we'd hoped to have for some of the affordable housing that's part of the design. So the conversation and really the work that you'll be doing this evening is taking a look at how the reduction in housing, which is in the range of 40 or 50 units, will affect the overall design of the facility. So there will continue to be the emergency housing that was part of the original plan. There'll be supportive housing that was part of the original plan, and there will be a fire station, which is part of the original plan. What's changed is that we had hoped to add 40 or 50 general affordable housing units for family or adults that would be part of it, which would help us to address what is it's a lack really throughout the area, the Richmond Highway Corridor, really throughout the county in housing that's more affordable. The county made a commitment to add 10,000 more affordable housing units by 2034. We're making some progress, but to be honest, we're going to have to move even faster if we're going to hit that target. So that was the original objective, not only mine, but others, was to try to increase the availability of that housing. We have a substantial amount of it on the Richmond Highway Corridor already, but frankly, it is not enough. And anybody you speak with who works with folks who are lower income and are needier will advise you and kind of relate to you the challenges of getting housing. And we have a number of folks in our community that are unhoused, and that continues to be one of our major challenges that this facility will help some with, but we're going to need to continue to work to improve the availability of housing for everyone, which is my commitment to the community, is housing for all. So again, you'll hear the details tonight about how that changes some of the earlier designs, but the commitment is still the same. The opportunity is to get this even more right, maybe than before, but there'll clearly be some impact on what the facility will look like. Some may like it better, some may not. But regardless, we need your input. We need your help in putting together a facility that will fit in with the community and fit in with the Richmond Highway Corridor as it continues to grow. We expect, again, substantial numbers of additional people that will be living on the highway. That's part of the comprehensive plan that the community approved really over the course of 2015, 16, and 17, formally approved by the board in 2018, and we've been working to implement ever since then. With that, I'm going to be on just a few more minutes, and then I have to go to another meeting. But I know Christine will be here to get your comments, and if I need to go back and listen to the recording, I'll be happy to do that as well. So again, my thanks for all of you and your work to make our community a better place for all. Thank you.
So before I hand it over to the CAP projects team, I just wanted to thank all the county staff that are on here. We have a lot of different folks from a lot of different departments that are here tonight to be part of the presentation and to make sure that we can answer all the questions. And I also wanted to, for the committee, just wanted to mention, we spent a lot of time with Josh Delmonico, who was the president of the Spring Bank Community Association, and they recently had an election, and Josh is no longer the president. And so we have Kevin Knapmiller that's going to be joining us, and Kevin's on here tonight. So he's got a blank screen, but I wanted to introduce you, Kevin. Oh, there you go. Okay. Just wanted to introduce you real quick to the group so everybody knows who you are, and welcome you, and thank you for being a part of this. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, Bruce Shawley.
Thank you, Christine. So I know Claudia and our architectural consultant team is here today with us, and they're going to walk you through some of the revisions in the designs. But just as Supervisor Stork mentioned, the last time we shared some of the designs with you, we were a much denser development on this site. And with the reduction in the housing and the supportive housing, we are kind of eager to show you what we've come up with. It does reduce the density a little bit, and we hope that what you will see today is something more in keeping with what the neighborhood is all about and what Richmond Corridor is going to be about as well. So really eager to see that. And with that, handing it over to Claudia.
Good evening, everyone. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Please let me know if you don't see it or if any issues. Can everyone see the screen, the presentation? Okay, perfect.
Yes.
So again, thank you everyone for being with us tonight to go over the new design. I'm going to start by giving just a brief idea about the latest program, where we are today, and then I'll hand it over to BKV and MTFA to go through the design. So for the Penn Daw Fire Station, it's about 23,000 square feet. We have 5 apparatus bay, 22 bunks that will be including the battalion chief, and we have 45 parking spaces. For the emergency shelter and supportive housing, we are at about 49,000 square feet, 50 emergency shelter beds, 20 individual supportive housing units. And this is the 10 family supportive housing unit is the addition that we added to the program. And we are at 54 parking spaces. And with that, I will turn it over to Mark from BKV to go over the site plan. Mark, you're muted.
Thanks. Appreciate that. So yes, we are coming back to you, and we want to go over the design and where we landed. I want to first start, for some folks who have been through this previously, you might recognize some of these features, but I do know there are some new folks here too. So let me give a little bit of an overview of the site if you haven't been there. The site is the old Hypel Valley Nursery. The site has some topography challenges that we needed to address in the concepts. Basically, from the top left corner to the bottom right corner of the site, it slopes about 30 feet. And from front to back, about 20 feet consistently as you go down the hill. The original layout of the different program elements, the fire station, the emergency housing, and the supportive housing, stays consistent. So we continue to locate the fire station in the same location, and we continue to locate the emergency housing, the supportive housing in the same location on the site as well. Where we landed in our conversations with Fairfax County Department of Transportation and also with VDOT was they really were pushing to locate the entrances at certain distances that were conforming to their requirements from the existing non-conforming entrances to adjacent sites. And that's what we've done. We've maintained a central entrance to the site, and you can see it. Yes, thank you, Claudia. So that's going to be the main entrance to the site to serve the functions for the emergency housing staff and also the supportive and family supportive units parking needs. And then, of course, the fire station has a separate entrance for their staff and also for the public. The blue parking indicates the public parking, and the green indicates the staff parking. The vehicles will be responding to Beacon Hill from that large apron in front of the building, and that's consistent with what we originally had shown you. And of course, Fairfax County best practice for fire stations is we want 5 drive-through bays, and so that's what you're kind of seeing. And so the vehicles can circulate around to the rear, and then be able to egress and respond. The parking was a major concern of all the stakeholders throughout this process. The county really wanted to see as much of the parking, if not all, to occur behind the buildings, which we've been able to accommodate all the way through and continue to. Also, the landscape buffers, specifically between the public uses and the existing residential uses, are provided. You can see them along the sides of the fire station site and also the shelter site. And that was very important. This is an established neighborhood, and we want to make sure that we're respecting our neighbors in as much as we can within the confines of our site. The overall development of the site, really we wanted to look at different areas of amenity and feature and how they will activate from outside to inside into the building, into the different uses. And you can see where the entrances of the individual uses occur. We'll start with, on the left side, you have the emergency housing. And so that whole outdoor area is intended to provide a procession for people that are wayfinding, maybe are hesitant to come into the emergency housing for the first time. It gives them a nice, beautiful, well-landscaped area that they can begin their journey to receive help. And I think that's really important and would be a major part of the success of this overall project. And it also helps to let the building become the buffer for the different uses. So that area is activated by the emergency housing and is really protected, from view, and it fosters, I think, a very humane process of entering the facility. But then we also have an entrance for the family supportive portion as well, and you can see where that occurs. And we really wanted to work so that front amenity space could connect to the public right away. And we really wanted to avoid heavy features, fencing, walls, and those types of things, so that it was very inviting. And you'll see that as we journey through the design. And then continuing to the public entrance for the fire station. So very highly visible, flanked by the very recognizable apparatus bay doors. So we also wanted to recall some of the history. So we want to relocate the existing small howitzer that's located at the current Penn Daw facility and kind of highlight that and integrate that into community art. So in a nutshell, you can see how the pedestrian orients to the building and also how the vehicle orients to the building. Amenities for trash removal are in the rear of the building, both for the fire station, a separate one, and also for the one serving the emergency and supportive housing feature. We already talked about the number of parking spaces that are within. So I think that's all I wanted to touch on here. One of the things that is a little bit of a departure, though, is the buildings are separated now. And originally they were not. We had much more mass, and they touched, but we really wanted this to look like a unified campus. There are benefits to having this driveway separate and not build over top of it like we were doing, because it's going to allow us to underground the existing overhead power that goes through our site. And it's going to help us to do that a lot more economically. And what we wanted to do, though, was to develop an entry, a gateway to the campus. And so we'll look at some renderings and you can kind of see what we're thinking about in there. But I think this will be a very exciting overall composition. Of course, the mass and scale has been reduced, but that has been a major concern throughout the process. And we think that this mass and scale is probably more consistent with the existing mature neighborhoods that surround us. Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Megan and to Brian, and they're going to talk about their piece of it, which is the supportive housing and the emergency housing.
Thank you, Mark. Claudia, if you want to forward to the next slide, we can look at the floor plans. Thank you. Working from left to right, as Mark was mentioning, the entry to the emergency shelter and supportive is on the left-hand side here. We wanted to locate it back a little bit so that there is this kind of landscape procession coming into the building that allows you to kind of take your breath, have a little bit of a pause, relax, and come in centrally into the building, so then functions can be supported kind of both north and south. And so as one enters into the facility for the emergency shelter, they're immediately greeted with a reception area and an open area that has lounge seating and other furniture and workstations areas. To the north of that is the administrative area and medical check. As you can see there, we wanted to put the staff offices kind of on that northwest corner, not only from a layout standpoint, but also it allows staff to have visual connection to the front yard and also to that procession coming down into the building entry. The blue area to the south would be the multi-purpose room supported by the kitchen, and so multi-purpose and dining is located in that area. The area also to the southwest would also serve as the hypothermia shelter during winter months. We do have some access from the multi-purpose room out to an outdoor plaza area, which is elevated from the area in the back, but that allows for these multi-purpose spaces to continue to have some access to the exterior, connection to daylight, and to nature. As Mark was mentioning, we really wanted to kind of have two distinguished entrances, one for the emergency shelter and then one for the supportive housing. And so the supportive housing has an entrance directly in the center. As you come off of Beacon Hill, you come through a, very similar to a front yard that you would have in your house, a nice lawn area with sidewalks and seatings, and that really becomes kind of your front yard coming into the supportive housing. That lobby has reception and then administration that is separate from the emergency shelter on the first floor, along with a community room, which if you continue further south, goes to an outdoor deck area, outdoor plaza area, which will have a playground and other outdoor amenities for the supportive housing. To the east is a corridor which would be separated. As was mentioned, there's 10 supportive housing units for families. On this floor, there is a 4-bedroom and then a 3-bedroom. The 3-bedroom on this particular floor is an accessible unit that will have kind of security access from the main lobby area, so that there's security is critical in all times on this. And each floor has its own laundry room. And so if we can go to the second floor, moving up a level, again, working from left to right, is the kind of this central community space that you see in the purple. This is for the emergency shelter. This allows people to congregate, do different activities. To the north of that, again, is some administration area. And then to the south is the emergency shelter sleeping areas, both an area for men and an area for women, along with their showers and bathroom areas. Again, there's to the right additional supportive housing. On this level, there's 4 units, 2 3-bedrooms, a 2-bedroom, and a 1-bedroom. There is also another community room in kind of this connector where Claudia is pointing right now. That is a second kind of community room for this level. If you need to get a little bit of space away from the unit itself. We wanted to make sure that all the units had natural daylight and kind of had, very kind of central gathering area for where families could gather within each unit. And then moving to the third floor, the entire third floor here is supportive housing. And so the area on the left side is all single supportive housing units. There's 20 of them total on the left side. along with 2 of those are ADA accessible. There's additional community space, which you see in the purple. And then to the right side, again, is additional supportive housing family units, which includes 2 2-bedrooms and 2 3-bedroom units. As Mark mentioned, there is about a 20 or so foot difference in grade from the front to the back. And so I think in some of the previous renditions of the project, there was actually underground parking. That's been removed and it's surface parking now, but there is an area in the back that is for arrival, not only from where you're parking back there, but also for services that takes you up from that rear parking area into 2 separate elevator cores. The one on the left is for the supportive housing, and the one on the right is for the the one on the left is for the emergency shelter. The one on the right is for the supportive housing. And so if you park in the rear, you could either come in through that corridor and go up an elevator, or there's also an exterior stair. So if you're parking there for the supportive housing, you go up the exterior stair, and that'll take you to that elevated plaza that we saw in the site plan. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Mark, and he can walk through the fire station.
Thanks, Brian. Okay, so the fire station, where we left off, we talked about the public entry and where that would be located. Now, on the first level, and this is a little bit of a departure from what you saw previously, in that we were looking at a 3-story fire station option because the footprint needed to be reduced in order to support the mass that was being developed. And so in this case, we've been able to look at a 2-story option, which is from an operational perspective of benefit. So the typical guiding planning approaches for fire station specifically relate to the turnout time. How quickly can firefighters respond to the apparatus bay? And cancer prevention is another huge one. So we'll talk a little bit about those 2. So the apparatus bay, those 5 bays that are in the middle, and the building is oriented to maximize the efficiency of your approach, either from the upper levels or from the admin area in the front, which is the purple. So those offices in the front, or the living areas, such as the day dining suite or the fitness area. So you can see all the perpendicular corridors from the stairs into the apparatus bay align to create a very efficient response to the apparatus bay. And of course, the support spaces around the apparatus bay for things like gear and decon are all oriented with access directly from the apparatus bay. So the apparatus bay becomes a major organizing element in terms of how we want to organize the rest of the building to allow firefighters to respond efficiently. Cancer prevention is another major issue. So we don't have a hot zone diagram here, but that color, that dark red color where the apparatus bay is, all of those spaces are either the source of contaminants or they have items in there that have been contaminated, whether they're in the decon area or the gear. So we like to say that we call this the hot zone. And so we design the building to be compartmented so that it protects the other spaces, which we call the clean areas, from those areas. And we have we have these little vestibules that connect the 2 and allow for passive pressurization between the building systems, so that the systems that serve the green zone aren't contaminated by the systems that serve the contaminated areas. That's a very important factor with respect to fire station design. And then if we go to the second floor, this is where the bunk rooms are and the locker room area is. And so another major issue with respect to the fire industry is the gender equity issue. And so moving away from gender designated locker rooms and doing a unisex locker room where people will store their equipment, but they will not change, and then providing these individual changing rooms for the purpose of changing, is the direction that the county is proceeding in. So this maximizes their flexibility and dealing with those gender issues. in a way that I think is very thoughtful and respectful. And that's the direction of the fire industry today with most of the clients that we're working with. The bunk rooms are individual bunk rooms. And so the fourth issue that's major issue with respect to fire station design is sleep deprivation. So providing these individual bunk rooms where the individual crews are alerted when they have a call rather than having the whole firehouse alerted supports sleeping habits. That's a major health factor with respect to the emergency responders. And so this is a state-of-the-art facility, and it needs to respond to those challenging issues. And then, of course, there are some command suites up at the top in that purple area in the top right corner. So that's the layout of the fire station. One of the things I did want to talk about, and if you would, could you go back to that site plan again before we get into the yeah. One of the major concerns that was raised was the noise that would be generated by the emergency generators. And so both of these facilities will have their own dedicated emergency generator system. And what we've done is we've located the one for the fire station kind of in within the building. And it is exterior, but it allows the building to really kind of buffer the noise that's going to be generated by that specific unit. Whereas before we were putting it, close to the building, but still exposed to the residential side. We think this is a better option for the fire station generator, which typically has a regular run time. So you at a certain time of the day. And so we really wanted to make sure that wasn't a nuisance. And of course, the one that's serving the emergency supportive housing will be kind of in that lower level area that we looked at that Brian talked about previously. So the idea is that and of course, that side is not adjacent to the current residential uses. Where the one for the fire station, that site is adjacent to existing residential uses. So we really wanted to be thoughtful in our approach to noise abatement and make sure that the community, was going to get a facility that wasn't going to be a noise nuisance to them. Okay. All right. So now we want to talk a little bit about the perspectives. So we tried really hard we spent a lot of time in the initial pass at this. Developing the material palette. And so we thought that the palette that we landed on was a very strong palette with several different masonries, and then use of existing or use of rain screen panelized systems as well. But so we kept that color palette, but you can see that the overall mass of the building is quite a bit reduced. So we go from, instead of 5 stories, we're at 3 stories now. And again, I think that was a major concern that the community had going through the initial phase. So I think, developing the project to a mass that's more respective to the existing context, I think is something that I think that the folks that we spoke with during the initial process should be pleased with. But overall, you can kind of see there was a couple of elements that we wanted to kind of pull through with the corner piece where you can see the shelter and the cap on the shelter. And then we're kind of repeating those tower elements with that same cap, and then taking that all the way to the fire station, where we wanted some elements that were consistent. But we also wanted the functions to read as individual functions that were discernible, right? So we wanted an overall unifying concept, but then we want the different functions to also be discernible. And so that was really important. And then you can see with the landscaping features how the front amenity will hopefully engage that existing public right-of-way and be a really vibrant area of just connectivity for citizens. Will feel comfortable walking down Beacon Hill Road, and it becomes a very walkable neighborhood from that perspective all the way to Route 1. Okay. And here you can see the street level looking at the corner of the emergency housing and supportive housing, and that feature of the landscape amenity that you can see that kind of pulls you off of the street and into this procession to enter the facility. So we want to be cognizant of developing enough privacy that folks who are hesitant to come into the shelter can feel comfortable, but we also don't want to create barriers, and that's really important. So doing this in a humane way, it's a balance. And of course, we're always wanting to get input in things that people are seeing or concerns they might have. But that corner will hopefully become a nice entry marquee. There's going to be some signage, and then we'll take you into that plaza that will then orient you into the building. Okay. And now you can see the entrance to the supportive housing, which occurs just a little bit further down. Again, we talked about wanting to soften the edges, but still having distinct zones of what's the campus and what's the public right of way. So we wanted to create these masonry anchors to kind of highlight where the pedestrian entrance was. But we didn't necessarily want to have fences here. So we really wanted to rely on the softscape and the planting features to provide that territorial boundary for the overall campus, and let it be something that had a similar scale and feel to the residential community that's further down Beacon Hill Road. That was really important to us. Okay. And this is kind of an axon view that our landscape team put together so that you can begin to envision the public right-of-way, the sidewalk along Beacon Hill Road, the greenscape, the trees that'll be part of the right-of-way, and then how we're connecting these layered planting areas and tree plantings to create a soft and gentle feature that pulls people into that entrance. It's inviting. And provides a nice sense of place for the overall supportive housing function. And now we're looking at it from the far corner, looking at the fire station. So again, you can kind of see that rhythm that we're trying to create. The use of materials is consistent, the reds, the beiges, and some of the other tones. But then the formal aspects of it are also creating a rhythm that goes up and down Beacon Hill Road. And the scale is a little bit challenging because the larger mass, the 3-story mass, is at the higher part of the site, and then the 2-story mass is at the lower part of the site. So what we've tried to do is increase the parapet dimension. That's the dimension above the second level windows. And we're going to use that to screen the mechanical units from view, but also to provide a little bit more mass to that side of the building, so that it doesn't look like it's too small in comparison as you're looking up the road. There is some topographic challenges between the two entrances and between where the public entrance will be. So we're probably going to see some form of accessible ramp to get you up, and we'll hopefully develop it as a nice feature and engage some landscape pieces like you're seeing in this rendering to get you to the public entrance. This axon is looking at the rear from up high, but looking at the fire station and the public amenities for the supportive housing feature. I think there was questions from many of the community about what will it look from the back. We still will require the retaining walls along the perimeter, and that's basically because of the change in grades. As we said before, there's about a 30-foot fall from the corner, the far top corner to the corner that's in the view of the rendering. And so, in order to achieve our goals of 3 to 4% grading around the drive aisles for these very large and heavy apparatus bay vehicles, we have to elevate the pad slightly. And I think that that's going to have an effect also of providing a good buffer between the adjacent residential properties and our site as well, so that you will have less impact with the existing trees on the site and the buffer and the landscape buffer that we're going to add to it. And then this masonry retaining wall element as well. So I think it's going to provide a good sense of security and privacy to the existing residential landowners.
Thank you, Mark and
Sure.
MTFA. So on this slide, we're just showing our project timeline. We're currently here. We're at the end of our concept design, and our design will begin end of this month, which is today, up until September 2026. And our bidding and construction is expected to be in September 2026 to December 2029. Our next step will be a schematic design phase, which will begin in April and end in June. And expecting our rezoning and 2232 process to begin in June until March 2026. And our next public hearing will be on late fall 2025. And with that, if you have any questions, I'll turn it back to Christine. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all. Can you please go to the first slide?
Yes.
One thing I wanted to point out and make sure we didn't gloss over, which is I think a significant change in what we've talked about, but something that this committee's been talking about since the very beginning, is the mix of supportive housing. Initially, we were just looking at individuals, but now we have 10 individual rooms, and we also have 10 for families. And one of the things that we've heard consistently is we know that we don't have supportive family services in our part of the county. And so this opens up 10 rooms for that. And in making the change and not being able to do the affordable housing component, I think that hopefully making this change, we're getting a bunch of texts in here. That people feel good about that, because the committee's been talking about that for some time. And we heard that consistently also in the community meetings as well. So I just wanted to make sure I pointed that out. All right, Ray, I see that you've got some questions. Ray is asking, and this is probably for Tom Barnett, where did the families come from in the program? This is new. Yeah, are you asking about the programming, or where would the families come from?
The programming, Christine, you had hit the nail on the head. My first question is, where the heck did this family housing program come from all of a sudden? This is news to me. This was never in the original program. So the change obviously was made someplace by somebody.
Tom, do you want to tackle that one?
Sure. So I think, as Supervisor Stork was saying up front, the intention was to have a more dense or a larger number of sort of standard affordable housing units. Supportive housing is basically affordable housing with services. So this is a smaller size, smaller footprint in terms of the buildings themselves, but still providing affordable housing with supportive services to not only individuals, but families with children, as was presented in the original design with affordable housing, where families with children would also be residing. So it should look familiar, but sort of downsized.
Well, I was looking at my original slides of the program and the designs, and there's nothing mentioned of families. This is the first time the word families came up. And if you really wanted a denser project, get rid of the families and go with a lot more 1 and 2 bedroom places rather than 4 bedrooms. And the families are not there. My concern is suddenly we've got children here. We've got playgrounds. I just want to make sure that everybody knows this is something new that was added in. And I don't buy your comment that this was originally part of the program. It wasn't. I have the slides to prove it.
The affordable housing that was presented before would have had households of various sizes, including families with children. But you are correct that the word family was not specifically used.
I do have a lot of other questions, but I don't want to monopolize Mary. So Mary, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to say I'm really delighted. We've got some spaces for families needing permanent supportive housing. County just bought a extended stay motel out at Fair Ridge for 184 families, and that's just spectacular. That means it can move in a lot of families that are currently being put up in motels, and we need more of that here. We need more similar capacity for families. The county has a policy that families must be housed right away if they're homeless, and we put them in motels because we don't have enough facilities. So building these facilities where they can easily get services and permanent supportive housing, that's a much better idea. And hopefully they move on then to some affordable housing, which I hope we build more of in the area.
What does permanent supportive housing mean? What does that word permanent mean in this context? Over.
Sure. So permanent in this context means non-time limited or not temporary. So people who stay in supportive housing sign a lease the same way that anyone would in the regular rental market, where they stay until they no longer wish to reside there. So typically, if I remember correctly, the average length of stay for those exiting supportive housing was approximately 6 years. I don't know how that relates to the general population, but that's what permanent means.
My comment wasn't to criticize the family housing, Mary. I've seen some of those motels. This would be a big step up to where some of these people live, especially with your family. My comment was that it seems like people are programming behind our backs and changing things. Another question is, what happens? I think I might have said this early on in the first designs. We have this procession and a little plaza before entry into the emergency housing. And I don't know, I still don't quite get why this is there or what it's supposed to do. People are not proceeding down here. It's not a procession, it's not a parade. I kind of think that number 4 in the site plan would be a great place to hang out where the staff can't see you at night because the lobby doesn't face that area. The staff has gone home for the day. If it were my druthers, I would rather see that entrance moved further up to number 4 and forget the procession and let that lobby have access visually so you can actually monitor that area where the staff from the lobby can see it at night.
Mark and Tom,
just my comment.
No,
I know you're not going to change it now, but I just see that as a kind of a weird space. I think if somebody was coming here to be dropped off for emergency shelter, if they didn't know it existed here, would probably want to enter the supportive housing lobby, since that is the most visible.
One thing I'd like to clarify is that we intend to have cameras inside and outside the facility so that the staff will be monitoring all around the facility. So that includes at nighttime. The front desk will typically have staff there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, monitoring those cameras and conducting rounds routinely.
Wouldn't it be better to have a design that didn't need the cameras?
I think the cameras are necessary just so staff can monitor the whole facility.
Mark, hold on one second. Ray, Mark, do you have any comments about the design in the front?
Well, I know that the intent was to place the offices in the front so that they would have observation of that entire corner. So I think they've accomplished the observation part. But what we didn't want was to have people necessarily hanging out at that specific corner. We wanted to hopefully allow them to process into the plaza to get off of Beacon Hill Road, so that they aren't just kind of meandering along Beacon Hill Road. So we do want to kind of pull them towards the entrance of the emergency shelter.
Will there be staff in these offices 24/7 to be able to visually observe that and monitor it? Or does the staff go home at the end of the day?
There are staff there 24 hours a day, but not in those front offices. During the day, they'd be able to observe the space with their own eyes, but at nighttime, weekends, that's when they'd be using cameras, as well as conducting the rounds.
One thing that I don't see here that I saw in the other plans was a retaining wall along the public sidewalk on Beacon Hill Road. I think that's great that you eliminated that, because that would certainly be a nice invitation for graffiti along anywhere in Mount Vernon District.
We have a question in the comments from Catherine. Since you reduced the complex, have you reduced the square footage of the housing? If so, how much open space is there now?
So it's interesting is that obviously the square footage of the overall composition is far reduced from where it originally was. We basically reduced 2 floors over that supportive and emergency housing area. But the footprints are pretty consistent. The footprint of the fire station we allowed to grow because we went from 3 stories to 2 stories. And that was always, we were always looking at 2 options, a 3-story option and a 2-story. 2-story option has a bigger footprint, but it's a better design and is more functional and supports the operational goals for fire and rescue better than the 3-story would. The footprint of the supportive and emergency housing is slightly smaller than the original footprint, for sure. As you recall, the original footprint went across that driveway and touched the fire station. So there is actually more open space. And in fact, we always had that back amenity with the playgrounds, but the way that it was originally designed is you wouldn't have been able to get around the front from the rear amenity. And from an emergency egress perspective, it required us to have a process to egress through the emergency shelter amenity spaces. So now we don't have to do that. The amenity spaces have grown, and we have 2 means of egress from that rear amenity area to ensure that people are safe. And it also provides a much stronger compartmentation from that perspective as well, so that the emergency housing amenity is on the rear is elevated above the parking area with no access. So you cannot get from that shelter amenity to the parking area. And so and then the building itself separates and buffers between the 2 amenity spaces. So it does provide a much stronger separation between those 2 amenity spaces and enhances the overall security of the composition.
Thank you,
This is
Mark.
Catherine. Can I another follow-up question real quick?
Yep.
Thank you. The single-family homes that are in the rear of this property, I don't know if there's anybody on the call from there now, but if in case there isn't, one of the concerns that they have is that the brick wall, the retaining wall in the back, people could sit on the edge of it, and if they want to jump down, they can, and then they're in people's backyards. So what are you doing to put cameras back there, and what are you doing to protect those families' properties?
Well, there will be a fence as well as the retaining element. So it's not quite like you're thinking. Where you
Good,
have.
thank you.
Okay.
Claudia, can we move to that view, please?
Yeah.
Also, Mark, can you
Sure.
remind me what is the height of the retaining wall? I don't know that it's the same everywhere.
It is not, and you'll see it at that last rear. There you go. So From the grade level of the rear apron and parking area of the fire station to the adjacent grade is about 13 to 14 feet. But remember, that wall goes up another 7 feet because that's your secure fence on that area. Now, it doesn't have to be brick. We could stop the brick at the grade, at the upper grade, and then we could do a different type of fence up there, but we thought it would
No, no,
be,
just fine. I just, you
Yeah.
can't really tell from this, but what you're telling me is good. So you've
Yeah.
got about 14 feet plus 7 feet.
Yeah.
So that's a pretty good jump for somebody.
I don't think there'll be any firefighters jumping over there for sure. And then of course,
Thank you very much. I'm
Sure.
talking about the rest of the crowd.
Yeah,
And then on the Mark, as you go over on the housing side,
Mhm.
what is the wall height there? It looks like it's much less.
it is much less there. It's probably about 3 to 4 feet of retaining max, and then we would have a fence from that up to 6 feet. So you'd have a fencing scenario that follows the line of that retaining element. But there's really not going to be any way for the population that is using the supportive and emergency housing facilities to get onto the fire station property. There's just not.
I'm not talking about the fire station property. I'm talking about the houses, the single family homes
Mhm.
behind your supportive and emergency housing.
I see.
Now,
So
now
they
you
may want to
get-
climb on the wall.
So now you've got, kids are kids.
I got you. I got you.
Okay.
I got you.
So it's protecting the people behind.
I see.
Okay.
Yeah.
You also have the tree line there.
Yep.
Does this depict how the trees will be up against those walls?
Yeah, we'll follow the landscape buffer requirements that are prescribed in the land in LDS's zoning ordinances. So is this exactly like that? I don't know that we were being that intentional. It's roughly about what it would be. There'd be different types of plantings in this area, large trees and smaller plantings. But yeah, in that area, nobody's going to be able to climb that wall and sit on the top of it. It's going to be too tall.
So Mark, what I heard from you was that it's about 6 or 7 feet of fence on top of like 3 or 4 feet of retaining wall, correct? Yeah. So
Well, that's on
ultimate,
the far side. That's the parking spaces that serve the
correct.
supportive. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's correct. Yep.
Okay, so it is still tall enough,
Yeah.
and again, they could be either a combination of just
Yeah.
brick coming all the way up, similar to what we have at the
Yeah.
fire station back, or it could be a combination of a fence and a wall. So we'll make sure that
Yeah.
it's high
Yeah.
enough that it's not
Right.
climbable.
And I think the residential parcels, the currently zoned residential parcels and residential uses abut the fire station site. They don't abut the other side. Those are
I beg your pardon. That's not true.
okay.
I live behind there. That's not true. The 2 houses up from us will be behind the firehouse, but the 2 neighbors on the other side of us are up behind the supportive houses.
Understood.
And there's no reason why, somebody from there can't get behind there and come on down the way. I mean, there's no reason why, if it's only 6 feet, they'll get up there. I have deer that jump over there right now. So I'm just putting my 2 cents. And the other thing I'm worried about is the drainage. If you're going to build the firehouse up, we already have a drainage problem going down the hill from, it used to be the nursery. The water would just cascade down the back behind the nursery into our yard.
Yep. We
So got to look at that drainage.
we have, and we're going to be providing a better solution than what you currently have by far. We're going to be
Good.
capturing all the water,
news.
and we're going to be detaining it, and we're going to be releasing it at a much slower rate.
Oh, great. That's great. And by the way, I'm very happy that you've changed your plans. And I agree with the guy. You started out saying it was just individuals in that emergency housing, and now it's family. And I'm glad to hear that too. That is a much better situation. So I'm glad to hear that you changed your plans. But you know what? I'm not glad that you didn't notify me this meeting was going on. I had to go through Facebook's Beacon Hill Citizen Association. There's no reason why the houses right behind this, should not have been notified of this meeting.
Arlene, we certainly let
You didn't let me know. And I live
Springbank
right
community
behind there.
know, and we
You
have
didn't let
sent it
me
out
know.
multiple times.
Nobody let me know. There was no way I knew except through the Citizen
But
Beacon Hill Citizens Group, Facebook.
Someone starts whining. Oh, Mrs. Leesman.
I'm going to move to Mary Ram because Mary is on the committee. We're going to get to other questions at the end. And then I just want to check with each of the committee members before we take any other questions. So Mary, you're up.
Yeah, I just had a question about the setback. Remember early on, months and months and months ago, we looked at 3 different concepts, and we all liked the one that fronted most closely to Beacon Hill Road. And I'm wondering if this is that one. Is it still as close as it was? Seemed like it's a little further back. And the only point of that was that if it's closer to Beacon Hill Road, it gives a little room for outdoor amenities behind the buildings for both the families and the individuals, which I think is really important for them in the shelters.
Mark, can you answer that?
Yeah, the concept follows the original concept that we had adopted. I don't think we moved the footprint much at all. Maybe the geometries of the buildings are a little bit different, but I think it's pretty consistent to what we had previously. This concept follows the original concept that we had for the overall composition. But like I said, the fire station's a different footprint, and it's a bigger footprint, but it's 2 stories versus 3 stories, and the footprint for the housing is a little bit smaller. I don't think we moved it further away from the right of way, though. I think it's pretty much where it was.
Okay. How much room do you have for the individual shelter folks? I couldn't quite see that clearly on the diagram. Is that seems kind of small, but what is it?
You're talking about the amenity for the emergency?
The emergency shelter. There's a little outdoor space, I believe.
Yeah, the
planned for
depth.
them, so they can go out a little bit.
Yeah, the depth of that.
How big that is, and what would be in there.
Claudia, can you show the site plan again? That's a better view to see.
And of course, this will get sent out after the meeting, and this will all be posted online as well.
Right.
So this
So
will
I'm
go out to
looking at
everybody.
area 6 is for is that open space for the supportive housing for the individuals, and is 2 and 1 open space for the family housing? I'm not quite clear from this diagram what they are.
Correct. So 2 and 1 would be for the family housing. 1 is a playground area, and obviously these will get further designed and developed as the design proceeds further. The 6 is for the supportive housing and the individual housing, and that also wraps around towards the rear. As Mark was mentioning, there's where that red kind of triangle is with number 5. That's actually a break in the 2 plazas, and so someone from the emergency supportive housing would not be able to walk over to the play area or outdoor space of the family supportive housing.
So Mary, just to clarify, Yeah, just to clarify,
Sure,
6
could you
is
give
part
us
of the amenity for the emergency shelter, and 2 and 1
Yeah.
are for the supportive housing.
Okay. So I like keeping them separate, but I encourage you to give as much outdoor space as you possibly can for both groups.
Thank you.
Agreed. So this is Megan. The outdoor space for the shelter 6 is a combination of hardscape for outdoor dining on nice weather days, as well as some outdoor fitness and just some collaboration, kind of general community space for them. But 5 is also, they will use 5 as well for that outdoor space that's, directly at the entrance. So it does wrap all the way around.
Good.
Okay. Brenda Richards
I like the fitness space. You're going to have some of the outdoor gym stuff like we have in some places. That would be good.
We would be considering, how they can get some outdoor fitness and be able to use that space to do something. Absolutely.
Okay.
Brenda Richards or Kiri Kincannon or Kevin Knappmiller, do you all have any feedback or comments before I go to Ray?
This is just the plan. Is there some other talk about the vision of managing the operations in the context of the plan? I mean, the big question here that I have really is the way the emergency shelter is going to work with the family supportive housing. In other words, what is the op plan to keep right now in the emergency housing, it's about 10% registered sex offenders. So when you have that fraction of sex offenders this close to family housing, what is the plan to basically protect the children in this environment? Over.
So I can easily answer this one, Kevin, and happy to let Tom go into it a little more, but sex offenders will not have access to this facility. I don't know if you're aware, but since we started this project, there is a daycare across the street that has been approved, and then there's another one that's directly behind it. And that's within, I think, Tom Barnett, correct me if I'm wrong, it's within the 500 feet of the facility, and so sex offenders will not be admitted to this facility.
But it's an emergency shelter. So in other words, currently the Kennedy shelter where they're living, is that going to, what's the vision? Is the Kennedy shelter then going to be kept there, and that's where the sex offenders are going to be kept, where or allowed to stay? How is that working in the bigger picture of this? That has not been communicated. Over.
I'll let Tom Barnett take that one.
Yeah, I mean, you really took the words out of my mouth, Christine, that, sex offenders will not be allowed at this shelter. They'd have to go to another shelter that is not within that radius Christine referenced.
Do we know what's happening with Kennedy Shelter when this opens?
I don't believe any final decisions have been made, so not at this time.
Kevin, did that answer your question?
Yes, it did. Thank you.
I think the plan looks good. I'm pleased with where things are at.
Ray?
Hi, I was going back to Mary's comment. If you took the family supportive housing mass and moved it forward to number 3 on the plan, which is a front yard amenity, I don't know what amenities are in there, that certainly would give you more room in the back for more amenities for the family supportive shelter. Right now, it looks like the number 3 is just a front lawn, not really producing anything tangible as a help for the people in the family housing. The other question I had was, are the retaining walls on the sides and the back? Well, I know the one on the back isn't quite right, but the ones on the sides, are those retaining walls along the property line, or is there a little space between the retaining wall and the property line?
Yeah, the landscape buffer occurs in that space. So you've got the property line, which is that red dashed line that you're seeing along the perimeter where it goes from gray tones to green. That's the property line. And then the retaining walls are varying distances from the property line with respect to the buffer requirements.
How about the other side?
We're next to Walgreens?
Right.
Yeah, so there's no buffer requirement. You're right, it is a little bit confusing. There's no buffer requirement because Walgreens is a commercial retail. So we don't have a landscape buffer, so we're basically pushing the amenity up to the edge of the property line there.
The reason why I ask is because I am familiar a little bit with the back of the Giant at Beacon Center, and the back of Lowe's, and those areas are not. There's not a lot of visual observation of that at night, and I know there's a lot that goes on back there. There are cameras and there are lights, and also the area along the Mount Vernon Plaza. There's a drainage ditch that runs between the back of Shoppers Food Warehouse and the residential property, and those two areas are a nice place for vagrants to hang out, and they do. My question, I guess, would be to try to maintain this buffer on the south side with a retaining wall so that vagrants do not have the ability to get back there and hang out, because it's a great place where nobody can see them except maybe the people in the houses that back up to that. And the third question I have is, has there been any movement or any thought yet on what happens to the old fire station once this opens?
Not yet, Ray, that there haven't been any further discussions with that. If you go back and I will say, Supervisor Stork's commitment is that would be discussed in the community when we get to that point, but we're not there yet.
Okay, and so the back here in this little buffer between the retaining wall and the rear properties, I guess if I was a vagrant, the way to get there would be to run down the side of the fire station property where that little buffer is, but I think that might be a little difficult. Or I don't know where grade is, but between the south side of Walgreens and the next building, whether that's Brain Scarf or I don't know. Yeah, down there, would they be able to get over there? So maybe trying to fence this property between the property line and the retaining wall would be a good idea to keep people from getting back there.
Okay, I think that is a good point of discussion for security when we are developing the overall approaches. We'd still need to be able to get into those areas
to maintain them. Yeah, right.
But
right.
I think we could accommodate. I think there's probably ways to accommodate. I think that's a good comment.
Okay, is there anyone else?
Yes, I'm sorry.
Sorry. Is there anyone else on the committee that has any questions or comments that they want to make before I open it up?
Yeah, this is Kevin. I'd like to
yes,
follow
this is
up with my
Brenda.
last question
Oh,
again.
hold on, one at a time. Brenda, go ahead. You haven't made any comments yet.
No, I think that all those points that Raymond said was the security and whatnot. I'm thinking about those other two places that he mentioned. They're over 50 years old, and I'm sure that security back then is different than what it is now. But to go along with what Mary said about that area 3, it would be nice to have a little more green space for the families, because I think that's a healthy, with them already having stress and trauma, that it could be used for more of a green space. So yes, but looks good. Looks good. Great progress.
Thank you. Kevin?
Yeah, this is actually just a question back for Tom. As I thought about your answer for a second, I wanted a little bit of clarification. My understanding is that state law right now in the emergency, in other words, not the I'm registered to live here kind of mode, but the emergency mode that in fact you're legally not allowed to ask for their status, so that anybody is allowed into the quote unquote emergency shelter in conditions that are qualified as an emergency without checking any, in other words, let's just say this whole sex offender issue, there's no, you can't ask them that question during emergency situations in the emergency shelter. That's my understanding of the state law right now. Is that not the case anymore? Over.
So this is actually something that surprised me. In the state law, emergency shelters are specifically those stood up for like disasters and fires, that sort of thing, floods. It's not referring to an emergency shelter that serves dedicated to homelessness. So similar terms, but legally for the state law, it's a different type of shelter.
Okay, thanks. So you're just like, yes, absolutely no sex offenders will be allowed in this facility ever, period. Absolutely.
Absolutely. That's been the direction from the supervisor.
Okay, great. Thank you.
All right, Ray has one final question. What's the material of the beige areas on the building elevation? That's a good question, Ray.
I'm assuming that these would probably be the composite panel areas, the beige, because there's a beige brick too. There's a taupe gray, which is a composite panel, but there's a beige brick and a red brick, and then that taupey gray is a composite panel system. I'm hoping the beige at the bottom is a brick, if that's what you're referring to. So you got a red brick and a beige brick, and then there's an accent brick as well.
Okay, I think that answered his question. Okay, Ram, thanks for your patience. Go ahead and ask your question.
Can I ask a question now?
Oh, yes, go right ahead. Yep,
all right.
You're up.
When looking at this, what you mentioned that the fire station is 2 stories, but it's at a lower slope. Why not flip the whole thing around? Is there any particular reason why the whole thing cannot be just flipped around with the fire station at the higher elevation and the housing at the lower elevation?
It's a great comment. Some of the initial planning approaches that went into getting us where we are, there's concern with where the traffic might stack, and we wanted to get the fire station as far away from Route 1 as we could. And then the thinking was that the shelter should be closer to Route 1 and further away from the residential areas. So it was an intentional act and planning discussion about where the different program elements should occur on the site. And that was the direction that we had determined initially in our planning approaches when talking not only with the community, but also with the stakeholders for the different building programs.
But it sounds a bit odd because Route 1 is the main road. Isn't that where fire engines are most likely to go up and down?
They actually respond in both directions. I probably should turn that over to Kirsten or to
Lori.
Lori's on the call too.
Yeah, and we have one of our assistant fire chiefs too. So I think they could probably answer that a little better.
Yeah. Chief Walter, did you want to answer that?
Hey, good evening. And yes, thank you for having us on the call. And I do apologize. I'm driving back from Richmond tonight and the rain is pretty torrential. We would respond both directions so that there's not a preponderance one direction or the other. And if Lori or Kirsten wants to jump in as well, I'm happy to have them add in.
No, I think as Chief Walter said, that we respond in multiple directions.
No, it's not multiple directions. It's the question. Beacon Hill Road is less likely to have fire engines go up and down than Route 1. whether it goes north or south on Route 1 is not the issue.
There are people who live on Beacon Hill. Yeah, I guess I'm not following your question then.
This is close to an intersection between Route 1 and Beacon Hill Road, isn't it?
Correct. And we
Okay.
do, we
And
will
the fire
have,
engines are much more likely to be going up and down Route 1. So being closer to Route 1 may make more sense. It's a lower building, so putting it at a higher elevation may also be aesthetically better. I'm just asking you to think about it.
Mhm.
yeah, well, the other thing is we do put emergency vehicle preemption on all of, there will be EVP,
That's
emergency
bureaucratic.
vehicle
Look,
preemption.
just think
which will-
about it, and next time tell us how the traffic is likely to move.
Can I've lived in this area all my life, and with the fire station up the street from me, I can understand your concern about it going on Route 1, but often the fire trucks also go down towards GW Parkway too, because there's homes and businesses there too. So, I think it's.
Someone must have data on this.
And also with the homelessness in the people in the area, they are closer to Route 1 than they are down on the other side. And it would be less of them coming through the neighborhood or closer to the neighborhood and closer to Route 1. So that's just my
fine.
opinion.
I accept that. But perhaps somebody should look at the numbers and the data on fire engine movement.
Graham, if you
Okay,
want to
yeah,
share
we'll be
your,
able to
if you
pull
want to,
the data, and we'll be able to say which direction the fire trucks go more often than not.
That would make sense.
Graham, I've also put my email address in the chat. If you want to shoot me your question, I can also share it with county staff and get back to you as well.
Christine, if I could jump in, one other thing also that was considered was the fact that if the fire station was closer to Richmond Highway, the pulling out of the fire engines and the fact that they are going to be potentially impacting traffic that is perhaps turning into Beacon Hill Road. I think that distance was too short when we met with some of our VDOT folks and FCDOT. So that was also another consideration, that they wanted to have a certain amount of length before the fire trucks can kind of come out and move, towards Richmond Highway. So there was some consideration for that as well. And then also making sure that, as I think others have mentioned, that more quick and easy access for the shelter residents to the rapid transit that's going to be on Richmond Highway, as well as more opportunities for them to get out there more quickly, rather than putting them more into the neighborhood. So those were some of the considerations.
Walking another half a block is a problem.
Thank you.
Anyway,
for showing.
I mean, just think about it.
Thank you.
Will do.
Okay, so from a timing perspective, we will of course post this video. The presentation will go out. We will also send it out in our regular notifications as well. And for the advisory committee, if there are other things that you see, if you have other feedback that you would like to share, I'd ask that you all take a look at this and get any feedback and comments back to me by when, for Shali or Mark?
We should be able to post this on the website in the next couple of days, Christine, so certainly, definitely this week.
Okay. Okay, so, and we can also, we can email this out as well.
Yeah.
So I would
definitely.
just ask if the, the team could take a look at this and get comments back to me by next Friday, the 11th. If you have any other things that you would like to have considered or questions. about this, that would be helpful. Mary, one final comment. Nope, you're on mute. Still on mute.
There you go.
Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm really happy to see this coming together. Finally, it's taking a while, and I'm just wondering, how can we get this moving pretty quickly now? Is it ready to go? Is it fine? Is it gonna rush through the other hurdles, so we can get something going soon? What's the next steps? I see it's opening in 29 is the current plan, 2029.
Yes, Mary's, our next steps are, we are going to be preparing for our zoning application for the project. Now that we have sort of settled on this concept, again, taking all of your feedback, incorporating that into the design, and also, working with the Department of Planning and Development as it has to go through reviews and approval. So that is our next step. We will continue to also develop the design further. Again, as Marlene mentioned, stormwater management elements that we also need to design for. A lot of that needs to be developed further in the design before it gets submitted for all of the zoning required processes. So that's the next thing that we'll be going through. It does take several months.
How many?
About
17?
About 9 months to go through zoning, but we will be concurrently working on furthering the design. There's a lot that goes into it. A lot of elements, we'll be now starting to design our mechanical systems, our structural systems. We know we have sustainability goals, so we'll be diving deeper into that as well. So all of that concurrently with our zoning application. So we're, again, we're trying our best in terms of how to move this forward. Lots to do, but at the same time, looking forward to, moving this along.
Dan started out saying that this redesign was because of budget issues, but I hadn't heard anyone say what the overall cost is, especially the breakdown between the fire station and the supportive housing emergency shelter. Do we have some rough number estimates of how much this is going to cost? Over.
Yeah, Kevin, I wish we had that. That was our next step. In fact, our immediate next step is we are going to be engaging with our consultants to develop a cost estimate. And after that, we will have an idea as to what this ends up being. We have been in coordination with our Department of Management and Budget. We have indicated to them clearly the fire station and the shelter that were previously approved on the bond. Those were from a while ago. There has been market escalation, a lot has changed, the scope has changed, so we are going to have to take a fresh look at what those costs are. So at this point, while we don't have an exact number to share with you all, that will be coming soon as well. And like I said, we have been in conversations with Department of Management and Budget to coordinate the funding.
So I just want to clarify too. I just want to clarify. Oh, hold on, Mary. I just want to clarify too, Kevin, that the emergency shelter had a bond that was approved, and there's approved money for that, as well as money for the Penn Daw fire station. So I should know these numbers off the top of my head, but I don't remember what they are.
Yeah. So for the fire station, we had approved $15.4 million. And then for the shelter, we had $12 million approved.
So obviously, because of construction and other things, costs have escalated. So they are looking at that piece of it. The part that Supervisor Stork was referencing was affordable housing. And we were working with the county's residential housing authority to see if we could find a way to include affordable housing as well as the other components to the building, and that is the part that was unattainable. there was no funding for that, and that was also not part of the original bonds.
Do you see
Hey,
any,
thank you. That was helpful.
do you see any further road bumps or barriers that might slow this down, or is it look like smooth sailing now?
We haven't, Mary, I'm not aware of any other issues. I mean, from an affordable housing and certainly from the fire station side, the county's committed to getting these projects and these programs done and implemented. And, while I obviously can't speak what the budget is going to be, cost escalations on capital projects is something that the board is looking at and considering.
Well, let us know if we can do anything to help.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you. Okay. Well, we will get this out in the next few days to everybody. Certainly appreciate your time on a very rainy and thundery Monday night. If you have any comments or questions or anything else, please feel free to reach out to me and or the project team. And appreciate your all's comments and feedback this evening. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Yep. Have a good night.
Thanks,
Thanks,
you. Have a good
everybody.
night.
Okay.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.